Hey, your mom dropped you off at the arcade. Time to line up your quarters on the Street Fighter II marquee. It's been 2 months of allowance and 7 minutes, losing to the low kick kid. You gotta learn that defense, then pick a gap for Ryu's Dragon Punch. Speaking of learning things, I'm learning a couple of new skills for this knife build. The first is drawing scroll work. I want to learn to engrave at some point, but I don't have the time or money for that right now, so doodling scroll work is a great place to start in the meantime. Scrolls are very common in engraving and are based upon the figure of a curled up acanthus leaf. They're often these logarithmic type curves and spirals and frequently repeated forms such as this basic leaf structure. Alright, our tokens are in the machine, our feet are shoulder width apart. Let's go ahead and hit the start button. This is our 5160 steel bar. I'm going to get it pointed first, which is where I almost always start with forging a knife. A very common mistake for me is to not let the forge heat up before starting, and in turn not letting the steel get hot enough. Trying to shape red hot steel is really not a good use of time or energy. I have to remember to let the metal get up to an orange-yellow heat if I want to be efficient. I'll be sketching up some scroll work to use in both the handle and the blade of this knife. More on how I intend to do that in a little bit. Engraving, as I understand it, can't be called original unless you create the pattern or drawing yourself. So people seem to develop their own style to one degree or another. I've been doodling off and on for about a month now, trying to develop my own repertoire of patterns and motifs to work from. So I'm doing a special handle, and I haven't quite sorted out the details at this stage yet, so I don't want to box myself in. I won't be forging the handle to shape for that reason. I don't want to make it too small at this stage, basically. Alright, my spine's curving a little bit more than I want it to, so I'm going to line up some spine slaps here. I need to get some real power behind them, so you're going to hear me channel that power through a vocalization exercise performed at the anvil here. Hadouken! Hadouken! Looks a little smallish, so I'm not sure this is going to be the final handle. I'm going to leave a little bit of meat on here as I trace around this just in case I decide to embiggen it. Yep, that first handle pattern was just too small. So I'm on my third iteration of it here. Luckily I do have enough material left in the handle portion of the knife to work with it, so I can accommodate tracing out a larger handle. It's into the stainless steel foil. From here it's going to go into some normalization cycles in the heat treat oven, and then we'll quench it and temper it. Bevels are ground, it's off to the sanding table. This is also known as the kitchen table. There's air conditioning and a chair inside as opposed to the garage. I don't know why my wife puts up with this. Time to sketch up a pattern for the blade. I can't engrave anything, but I can draw out a scrollwork inspired doodle. I'll send it to my computer where I'll trace it out in Photoshop into a PNG file. Then I can email that to a company to have them make an electrochemical etching stencil. I recently got a Personalizer Plus etching machine. I hope it is powerful enough to etch out a large pattern like this. I think it should be, but it needs to make it nice and deep and retain some crisp lines. It's a DC and AC machine, which is very nice. The AC only machine that I was using before was underpowered and couldn't really get anything done, so I'm lucky to have the new Personalizer Plus. Now the trick here is to etch long enough to make a deep pattern without going overboard. If you do too strong a current or too much contact, you'll just blur the edges like that test piece. It's a very deep etch, but just too fuzzy. So I'm going to use a little less time here in contact with the leads, and we'll just see what happens. It looks okay. After cleanup, there are some spots where the oxides brushed out at the bottom of the pattern where it just wasn't quite deep enough. I'm going to put a different pattern on the other side. I made this using the same process as before. And I'm going to try to hold it a little longer, but honestly the knife is getting really hot and I feel like I'm about to melt something. There are some light spots here too, and late in the process I'm flashing ahead here. I'm going to show me at the buffing wheel. I basically decided to buff out the black oxides and make it just more of a uniform appearance, more of a geographic sort of light etched appearance where you really have to sort of look at it to get the pattern, which is, it's cool. It's not what I intended, but I think it works. So onto the handles now. I'm going to cut up this curly maple. So here are our slabs. You can see the three different patterns I drew up earlier. This is what I was talking about. They just don't quite fit in the hand. It's the third one that's just right. It's just sort of big enough. So that's the way my metal is shaped. That's what we're going to shape the handles to. And we'll get everything drawn up and matched up. So as you've noticed, it's very important to align the handle pin holes from the pattern onto the scales, and then to keep everything indexed in that way. We're going to trace the pattern onto the scales indexed to those pinholes as well. I have this black carbon transfer paper We'll get that process going and then we'll be ready to chisel some wood. This is a little stippling punch I made out of some nickel silver round stock on the fly. In woodworking, they call this making little inner ripple dipple stipples. That's how they talk to each other. Oh, hey, Gene, your beard really makes that plaid pop. Hey, could you bring some sandpaper in that lathe over here? I'm turning some more pin blanks. Yeah, I've given everyone I know 3 now. Oh, no, they love them. Say, bring that stippler with you. I got some huge dipples over here to contend with. Oh, on the floor? Yeah, no, that's my finger. Just leave that there. That's all true. It's all true. The stain I'm using is called Majestic Maple. It's a water-based acid, basically oil-based finishes, and stains have a hard time coloring maple, and since I want the curls here to really stand out, I'm going to try to add a lot of contrast with this acid staining technique. It goes on light but darkens up significantly within about 5 minutes of being applied, so use caution. I got this a little bit darker than I wanted, but it still looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. Staining's almost done here. I'm going to attach the handles to the knife before applying the final finish though. Oh, you know it's time to dry fit before gluing up. You always dry fit. Would you try playing the Street Fighter Alpha 3 version of Rainbow Mika and her underpowered normals against Ken? You think you could master Dualism in one weekend? No. No. This is serious. You always dry fit. I've done a bit of sanding on the maple handles since their original fit up with the tang, and the tang therefore is now protruding in several areas, at least enough to catch a fingernail in several spots. So the high spots have to be sanded down on the belt sander here, and anywhere I hit wood, it's just going to have to be restained. That doesn't turn out to be a big problem. I'm going to use 2 coats of Danish oil here. And after that dries, I'm going to apply 2 coats of true oil. You can see here cleaning the first coat with some steel wool and applying the second coat. Well, here it is. I wish the etching had been a little bit deeper and cleaner in a few spots, but overall, for learning 2 new processes, I think this turned out pretty good. You guys have a good one.
This is the strongest muscle.